And welcome back, everybody. It's Dina Calmetta here with CWW7 News. And for today's first headlines, I wanted to touch base on what happened over the weekend. Apparently, the United States shot down a Syrian warplane just yesterday, and Russia has responded and warned the United States not to hit Syrian government troops. In addition to that, Russia has promised to target U.S.-backed troops in Syria after downing of the warplane. And there are even more headlines. Here were just a few of the headlines within the last 48 hours. Trump reverses pieces of Obama-era engagement with Cuba, and Russia says Trump is using Cold War rhetoric on Cuba. NATO starts war games and surrounds Russia. U.S., Russia, and Iran draw new red lines in Syria, and we cannot leave out Iran and China. Iran and China conduct joint naval exercises and strategic Strait of Hormuz. So I'm not going to go into detail with every single headline, but I just wanted to give you guys a snapshot as to what occurred over the weekend. But I do want to touch base with the United States, Syria, Russia, NATO, and also Iran and China. So let's jump into these headlines, and then I will be right back. A U.S. Navy fighter jet shot down a Syrian government warplane after it attacked Washington-backed fighters near IS de facto capital. In a statement, the coalition headquarters in Iraq said that a FA-18E Super Hornet shot down a Syrian Su-22 that had dropped bombs near positions held by the Syrian Democratic Forces. The statement said coalition aircraft had conducted a show of force to turn back an attack by Syrian leader Bashar Assad's forces on the SDF. The coalition said the shoot-down took place in accordance with rules of engagement and in collective self-defense of coalition-partnered forces. The statement said a number of SDF fighters were wounded in the regime's attack, but did not specify further. The coalition also said that Russian officers had been contacted on a special deconfliction hot zone in an effort to halt the assault. The coalition's mission is to defeat IS in Iraq and Syria. The coalition does not seek to fight Syrian regime Russian or pro-regime forces partnered with them, but will not hesitate to defend coalition or partner forces from any threat. The statement went on to call for all parties in Syria's complex and bloody 6-year-long civil war to focus their efforts on the defeat of IS, which is our common enemy and the greatest threat to regional and worldwide peace and security. A U.S. defense official told Fox News that the Super Hornet that shot down the Syrian jet was based on board the USS George H.W. Bush, which is currently operating in the Mediterranean Sea. The official did not say which weapon was used to shoot down the Syrian plane. And Reuters is reporting that Russia had warned the United States not to hit Syrian government troops. The downing of a Syrian government warplane by the United States is a step toward a dangerous escalation, and Moscow is warning Washington not to use force against Syrian government troops. The Russian deputy foreign minister also told the agency that a set of new U.S. sanctions that can be imposed on Russia will lead Moscow to retaliate. And the Express is reporting that Russia has threatened to target U.S.-backed troops in Syria after America downed that warplane belonging to pro-Assad forces. Russia warned it will treat U.S.-led coalition planes in Syria west of the Euphrates as targets, as the nation's deputy foreign minister described the shooting as a dangerous escalation. But the U.S. Central Command said they had shot the plane out of the sky on Sunday in self-defense as it flew over the war-torn country. Reacting to the incident, the Russian deputy foreign minister said it was an act of aggression in support of terrorists. He said, what is it then, if not an act of aggression, and an act directly in breach of international law? If you want, it's actually help for the terrorists the U.S. is fighting, declaring that they are conducting a counterterrorism policy. He also warned Washington it must respect the territorial sovereignty of Syria, and the U.S. responds to the Russian threat. U.S. pilots operating over Syria won't hesitate to defend themselves from Russian threats, a Pentagon spokesman said Monday in the latest escalation. We do not seek conflict with any party in Syria other than IS, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves or our partners if threatened, says Captain Jeff Davis. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Joseph Dunford doubled down on the rhetoric during a Monday speech at the National Press Club. I'm confident that we are still communicating between our Operations Center and the Russian Federation Operations Center. And I'm also confident that our forces have the capability to take care of themselves, says Dunford. Department of Defense spokesman said coalition aircraft would continue conducting operations through Syria, targeting IS forces and providing air support for coalition partner forces on the ground. As a result of recent encounters involving pro-Syrian regime and Russian forces, we have taken prudent measures to reposition aircraft over Syria so as to continue targeting IS forces while ensuring the safety of our aircrew given known threats in the battle space. Russia, the United States, and Syria is literally a recipe for disaster right now, you guys. I will definitely keep you up to date as this story continues to develop. But let's talk about Russia and NATO. This next headline reads from Express News: Russia surrounded. NATO starts war games as troops swoop on Putin's enclave. Russia was surrounded on all sides by NATO forces as American and Britain kicked off a summer of war games in Kaliningrad amid World War III fears. Operation Saber Strike was launched in Russia's western enclave with U.S. nuclear bombers and Britain's best aircraft leading the assault. President Putin's Baltic Fleet is based in the region, and it was reported that the joint UK-US show of strength angered him. Mr. Putin's forces in the region include short-range ballistic missiles with 300-mile reach. However, in a show of strength, the U.S. deployed a historic amount of its nuclear bombers, including B-52, B-1, and B-2 stealth aircrafts. Lieutenant General Richard Clark, a U.S. Air Force commander, said America wanted to show that it was ready to deter conflict. The move appears to be a signal from the U.S. that it is ready to muscle in if needed, even if it angers the Kremlin. Last week, Russia sent a pair of Tu-160 Blackjack strategic nuclear bombers, the biggest aircraft in the world, through the Baltic Sea. The show of strength by U.S. and British troops is to deter Russia from severing the Baltic states from the rest of the Western alliance. However, Russia denies any plans to invade the Baltics and says it is NATO that is threatening stability in Eastern Europe by building up its military presence there and staging such war games. Lieutenant Colonial Steve Venter, a U.S. commander, stated, "Our focus here is to deter and defend the alliance from aggression by being razor sharp and lethal. God forbid we would have to defend, but we create a deterrent effect by being credible." NATO officials believe Moscow will hold its own exercise in Russia and Belarus on a much greater scale in September, possibly involving 100,000 troops under the code name Zapad. And speaking of exercises, Iran and China conduct joint naval exercises in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The naval maneuvers come amid growing tensions between the U.S. and Iran as Washington prepares a new round of sanctions against Tehran. The exercises, which had been planned in advance, are aimed at promoting interaction and strengthening confidence between the navies of the two nations. It is the second time the Chinese Navy has visited the Iranian port since 2014. Animosity between the U.S. and Iran has been growing since President Trump took office in January. The most recent spike in tensions flared up when the U.S. Senate approved a new set of sanctions against Tehran. Although the bill has yet to be passed in the House of Representatives and signed into law by the president, Iran has blasted the proposed penalty, saying they would violate the long-negotiated nuclear deal signed by Iran and 6 major powers back in 2015. Definitely wars and rumors of wars, but what also is concerning is the escalation between the United States and Russia. So I will definitely keep you guys up to date as these reports continue to develop, but stay tuned. I do have more news coming up next.